guess that's what they are.
Are we good? Alrighty. Hey, good morning, everyone. Thanks for coming out. We will start today with an invocation from Pastor Jim Kimbrell.
Let's pray. Our loving Heavenly Father, we are grateful to you. Grateful that you have watched over us even through last night. And now your mercies are new this morning. You have granted us life. You have given us a beautiful place to live. You've given us a land of freedom and opportunity. And so today, God, as you've given us these individuals to govern us and those individuals around them to serve us, may we be a people that would be a delight to you, God, and to them. We ask, God, that we would be easy to govern, that we'd be a people that are cooperative, people that help our neighbors, that care for the sick, that help the people that are lonely, and that this would be a place where people say, I want to move to Elbert County because there's a people there that care for others. And so, God, for our commissioners, would you watch over them, each one? Give them wisdom from you, God. May they not rely on their own understanding, but you give them wisdom. God, for our first responders who are daily putting their lives on the line for us and who need more support and more help, would you bring that? Would you put at bay the people that have evil intent in our county? Would you stop them before they act on their evil? And God, would you turn them to yourself? And so today, God, in this room, in this time, we invite your presence. We invite you. And we ask, God, that at the end of our days, we would know that you blessed us with your presence. And so we do ask you, and we do look forward to what you're going to do. And we thank you for your son, Jesus, who gave his life so that we might live. And we look forward to what's going to happen. Our best days are ahead, God, as a county and as individuals. And so, God, keep our eyes focused on you today. We pray this in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much, Pastor. All righty. Amanda, could you call the roll, please?
Commissioner Richardson.
Here.
Commissioner Thayer.
Here.
Commissioner Pettit.
Here. All righty. First item we have is approval of the agenda, and I understand we have one change.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve the agenda as permitted with one amendment, and that is that we strike H4.
All right.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to adopt the agenda as presented, dropping item H4. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Next, first item we have is the consent agenda.
I'll make a motion we approve the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
Okay, motion and a second to accept the consent agenda. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Alrighty. Elected officials, department head staff reports. Dallas. I hear we had an election last week. Or we still have an election going on. Okay.
Good morning, Commissioners.
Good morning.
We didn't have an election, and while election day is over, there's still a lot that the election department has to take care of, so this report will be a little longer than some of my other reports. And I know it's numbers, so you won't find everything to the numbers, but that's hard to understand as well. If you look at our website, and that's when we put county on election night. And as of at that time, for the county, on the Democrat side, for the president nominee, Bernie Sanders was leading in Elbert County with 608 votes. Joe Biden second with 583, and Michael Bloomberg with 547. On the Republican side, President Trump received 7,285 votes, and there was nobody else even close, which you would kind of expect since he's incumbent. Now these numbers will be changing, and that's usually where people get a little confused on why those numbers change. But people have till 8 days after the election to cure their signatures if the judges have deemed that their signature didn't match what we had on file. They are notified, and they have 8 days after the election to cure that ballot, and we've been having those come in on a regular basis as well. And also the U.S. college voters overseas in the military, they have until 8 days after election for their ballot to be returned as long as they got it in the works by the election day. So we always have some ballots at the end that we need to count. So as of right now, we have 240 ballots that have been received by the elections department that has not been counted. So those numbers I gave to you earlier will change after those are counted. So it's sometimes a little hard for people to understand why we receive ballots late, but those are the two main ones. We also receive ballots from other counties. People deposit their ballots in other locations. It becomes the county clerk's responsibility to get those to us, and likewise when we receive them from somewhere else, we will return those to the proper county. So sometimes those come in late, but as long as they're date stamped correctly before election day, received by a county clerk, those will count as well. So this year we received, as usual, several ballots from Denver County because they do a sweep at the Denver Postal Facility to pick up any ballots that are in the works there. So once we add those 240 in, we will end up with total votes cast in the county of 10,590, and that's it right now. We still could have some signature cures come in. That is more than we had in November, and we were a little unsure what we would receive since we haven't had a presidential primary in quite some time, what would happen, but it was a bigger election than what we actually had in November. Of those 10,590, 1,441 were Democrat ballots returned, 6,294 Republican ballots returned, and then there was 2,855 unaffiliated packets returned. And then when we do the unaffiliated, they have not preferenced, which very few in our county do. They receive both the Democratic and Republican ballot in the mail. There's very specific instructions in there to just return one ballot, and they have their choice in which one that they want, which election they want to participate in. And of those unaffiliated, 1,349 returned a Democrat ballot, and 1,435 returned a Republican ballot. And we can't presume to know why they returned which ballot they did, if they're really voting for the person that they wanted, or if they're trying to cause havoc in the other election that they weren't so interested in. So it's hard to say exactly what their motivation was, but those are what the numbers show. So we had another successful time counting in the election room. We're so grateful to have that space that we can leave everything on process and meet all the security requirements and be able to just pick up the next day without so much. Our judges this year on the Republican side were Mary Robin Wills, Wendy Walt, Beth Wilcox, Kimberly Babcock, Margie White, and our head Republican judge was Danny Wilcox. On the Democratic side, Brad Ike, Alan Krenick, Susan Suchin, Susan Schick, Jill Duvall, Julie Shirobi on the Democrat side, and Tracy Dutarm was our lead Democrat judge. We give a lot of authority and a lot of weight to Danny and Tracy in the room. They're in there the whole time, and they do a fabulous job for us, and we're very well together, and having lead judges that know the process and what's going on make things go a lot smoother for us. We also had an unaffiliated judge this year, which is nice for us because an unaffiliated judge can play with either party because it makes it easier for us to assign things. Alessandra Nevada was her first time with us, and I think she enjoyed herself, and we enjoyed having her as well. So I just wanted to point out our judges; they do a great job. They get paid a little bit, but not for the amount of effort they have. It's not equal, but I think they enjoy their time also. have a good atmosphere in the judging room. I also wanted to point out that Phoenix is always available to us. We always are calling on them if we have a question, if we have an issue. This year, the Secretary of State's office pushed down an update right in the middle of the day when we were trying to do counting, which kind of slowed everything down. But when we had questions about it, Phoenix came over, was able to help with that, and so we appreciate having them at a moment's notice when we need it during election time. Both the Republican and Democratic parties provided food for us, and we're always about food, and that was a good thing. It's a good uplift for the judges as well, and the morale boost when they're being recognized for the work they're doing by their parties. And so we appreciate that from the parties. We have a special person that comes in, kind of as an outside consultant and understands the programming and how the system works very well. Her name is Lisa Flanagan-Crane, and so we're using her directly instead of going through our vendor. We're saving a little bit of money there, and we have a terrific relationship with her, and she has a great understanding of the program. And so we want to point out to her she's been very valuable for us to have part of our team there. And as usual, our crack election staff did a great job. Amanda and Rachel, and Rhonda as the elections manager, do a great job administering elections and explaining things and keeping things moving. And so it's while it's a big lift and it's a lot of fun, and we still have 2 more to go, we have the people and the staff in place and the election judges ready to go to make the next one happen.
Thanks. Any questions or comments?
I'm glad you're doing it, not me.
Yeah.
Well, I don't think I want your job either. So.
On the returns, did we see the same general breakdown of a big chunk on the last day, or were these more spread out?
As it has been in the past, we were a little surprised out of the gate. We had a lot of ballots that came back early, and a lot of those were Republican ballots, and I think people were just excited to vote. But as that number switched more toward the end, particularly with our unaffiliated voters, we had more of those coming in at the end, and they broke more Democratic at the end, as you might expect, as the time came closer. So we'll look at all those trends and we'll make the necessary adjustments what we need for staffing at different times, but everything went really smooth.
Yeah, and you had mentioned, I think yesterday when we were talking, that there were less than 30 that returned both, unaffiliated that returned both ballots, or?
Well, yesterday I was just guessing.
Okay.
Today I have a paper. We had 37 unaffiliated people that voted more than one ballot.
Okay.
So 37 out of 10,590 is pretty small. We try and make it as clear as we can on instructions and elsewhere to please just return one ballot, but some people want to do that. And unfortunately, when they return with both ballots marked, either ballot counts for them. So that's just the way the law reads, and it's only the fair way to do it.
Well, at least it's a small number. So anyway, I do appreciate it. And Rhonda, I know this is kind of your Super Bowl year. This is what, the 3rd of 5 elections in a 12-month period or something like that? Okay. Thank you. Thanks. Eileen?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Eileen Krauth, Deputy County Manager. As you all know, we are, if you've been watching the news, our public health professionals are monitoring the coronavirus situation, and we do have Dwayne Smith here, who is our brand new public health administrator. Poor Dwayne came in just in time for us to have an epidemiological crisis. And so he and I, as the county's PIO, Public Information Officer, and Alex Jakubowski, who is our OEM director, he is not here today, and he assures us that he is ill, but not with anything that we're concerned about. He doesn't have coronavirus. And so we're here to just ready to give you whatever kind of an update you'd like to hear on the situation. I haven't had a chance to connect with Dwayne yet because things are evolving so quickly.
Yeah.
But if he looks like he's ready to maybe come up and talk. Good.
Yeah, if you could just kind of give us an update of just general status and who you're coordinating with and
Sure.
where we
Good
go
morning,
from here.
Commissioners. Good morning, everyone. So the most recent situation report from the Colorado Department of Public Health and Environment indicated, and many of you may have seen, the governor declared a state of emergency yesterday morning in his press conference. That will ostensibly allow the state to draw down federal funds to address the public health issues related to the outbreak. Currently around the state, there are 18 cases. There are no cases in Elbert County. There are cases and presumptive cases in neighboring Douglas County and Arapahoe County. Community transmission, in other words, meaning person-to-person transmission, has occurred in Eagle County. Eagle County has declared a state of emergency or a county of emergency to address this. As you may expect, they have a lot of international travelers, so they have a different set of challenges that we have. To date, there are 5 known hospitalizations around the state. There are no deaths. Yesterday morning, I sent out some communications via email to county commissioners, town councils in the county, school district leadership, providing some initial guidance on how we are collaborating with CDPHE, with Tri-County Health Department, and internally within the Office of Emergency Management, Alex, and of course, Sam and Eileen and everybody else is in the loop. Know that, as you might expect, this is a fluid situation. Probably the last 2 weeks every day has been spent on multiple updates throughout the day, either via conference call or personal calls. So I am happy to answer any questions anybody might have, but also I would like to share some guidance on, you've probably heard, hand washing, covering your cough, those kind of basic precautions. Now we are messaging social distancing, which means if you are among a group of citizens that are at disproportionate risk, i.e. the elderly or the very young, we are encouraging folks to stay away from large gatherings, large or community settings where a lot of people may be, where the risk of transmission of the virus is at an increased level. Just prudent and thoughtful precautions being taken. And I'll be happy to entertain any questions.
I guess if, I know there was a lot of talk about testing and lack of testing materials. I hear there's more coming into the state, but if somebody were concerned, I guess it's just you present to urgent care or your PCM and they decide whether they felt you needed testing or not.
Yeah, thank you, Commissioner Richardson, for bringing that up and queuing that up. The governor has been in communication with Vice President Mike Pence, who has assured the governor that we will get the testing kits that we need. There is a movement towards a prioritization of communities in terms of testing. As of this morning, CDPHE has set up a drive-through testing option at the CDPHE lab facility on Lowry campus. However, it's important to note that folks cannot summarily show up and get a test. They do need a doctor's note in order to get that test done. So they should not proceed to this or any subsequent testing facility. Also important to share, as testing ramps up, both by the state and by private entities like LabCorp and some other entities, we will naturally see an increased number of positive tests. So that is not cause for alarm. And again, coronavirus, this is a family of viruses similar to, influenza has a family of flu viruses. So we've dealt with this previously as a nation, as a state, with things like Middle East Respiratory Syndrome, MERS, and SARS, Sudden Acute Respiratory Syndrome. This is kind of the latest in the coronavirus family to manifest. So, did that
Yeah,
fully answer your
did.
question?
And then I guess the other one I have is, there's a lot, they use the term presumptive positive quite a bit. Is that
Yes.
the initial test and then somebody looks at it under a microscope and determines it? Or what's the difference between just positive or?
Yes,
Presumed
thank you.
positive.
Presumptive positive means that the state lab has identified a positive test. And before it can be confirmed, it's kind of a two-step process. That's lab sample specimen gets sent to the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention in Atlanta for confirmation. But we would, public health officials, medical officials would proceed on that presumptive test as if it were a fully confirmed test for precautionary measures, just out of an abundance of caution. One thing I should also add is in order to potentially mitigate the flow of folks going to an emergency department, should they be experiencing respiratory illness-like symptoms, again, we want to emphasize that folks should call their primary care provider, call their physician, who will guide them, assess their conditions, and then let them know if they should proceed to the emergency department, or kind of triaging those calls so that we don't overwhelm the acute care facilities who have challenges, obviously, with staffing, testing, and personal protective equipment to conduct the tests.
And Mr. Chair, I would just elaborate a little bit. Well, first of all, thank you, Dwayne, for, I'm so glad that you're aboard to provide us with the expertise. The timing is remarkable for us. But what I do want to say from a public information perspective, there is a lot of information on social media and on the internet, in the news, about the epidemic or the coronavirus. And we, as a county, want to be responsible about how we participate in disseminating that public information. So since things are changing so quickly, it can be challenging. We had a print reporter contact us last week that we talked to, and obviously the information that we shared with the print reporter last week is now out of date. We had a conversation about what that looks like. And so if you're interested in up-to-date current information, I would recommend two places. The first is very easy to remember, colorado.gov. It's the state's website, colorado.gov. It's up there on the screen. And you see there on the right-hand side, there is a link to CDPHE's website. That is where we, as public communicators, are getting our information. That's where the most up-to-date information for the Colorado situation can be found. So please, if you have any questions, rather than going to Facebook and Twitter, which who knows what kind of information you'll be able to find, colorado.gov, or of course the Centers for Disease Control, cdc.gov, also has information available. So I would encourage you all to use those as your resources for up-to-date information.
And if I may piggyback on that, the state has set up a call line, the Colorado Info Helpline, and I'll make sure these get in the minutes, toll-free 877-462-2911. Citizens can call that number and inquire anything they want to know about the coronavirus situation. And there's a local number as well, so we'll make sure that those get widely disseminated.
Thank you. Any questions or comments? And again, the timing of your arrival was good.
It's a learning opportunity for us all.
A little bit of a shift from keeping track of rabbit skunks, which is generally our biggest issue outside of just general public health. So thank you very much.
Very glad to be here.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Thank you. All righty. census.
Mr. Chair, can I ask you a big favor? Could we take our guests from the Colorado Energy Office out of order and allow them to do their presentation now? They've come all the way out here to spend time with us, and I'm not sure that they want to sit through all of the rest of our meeting. Would that be allowable, or would you
Yeah,
like to
I don't
wait
have a
until?
problem with that. Yeah, we can jump forward to the discussion item and we'll come back to staff and public comment, but please.
Thank you. So I've got, as you know, our county facilities are a high priority for us. And in looking around for sources of technical assistance as well as potential funding assistance, we connected with Dylan Southern and Dylan, I'm not even going to try to pronounce your last name, Klomhouse, there you go.
Yeah, I got it right.
From the Colorado Energy Office. They have a program in that state office called Energy Performance Contracting that holds some significant promise for us in terms of our ability to connect with qualified contractors to do some of the facilities work that we really are in need of, as well as focus on energy conservation. So they have got a slideshow and some information about the program. And so I'm going to go over there and hand them the clicker so that they can navigate themselves.
All right, thanks Eileen, thanks commissioners.
Thank you.
As an introduction, thank you. My name is Dylan Klumhouse, an engineer working at the Colorado Energy Office. We're here to, and I'll let Dylan introduce yourself.
I'm Dylan Southern. I'm a technical specialist and program manager at the Energy Office. So like Eileen mentioned, we've been working with her over the past few months to determine if energy performance contracting is perhaps a mechanism Elbert County can use to address some of the recommendations that we saw in the facility conditions assessment. Just a quick overview of our office. With the new administration, our mission is to reduce greenhouse gas emissions and consumer energy costs by advancing clean energy, energy efficiency, and zero emission vehicles to benefit all Coloradans. Our office is separated into 4 departmental units. That first unit is the low income and residential energy services unit. These are your weatherization, low income programs. It also addresses community solar and rooftop solar for any low income projects across the state. Next is the Building Innovation and Energy Financing Unit. So this is where our program lies. These programs focus on the built environment and identify ways of using financing platforms to access capital to make any improvements. The next unit you'll see is the Transportation Fuels and Technology. This is, I guess, maybe our trendy unit in the office. As I'm sure you're aware, the governor puts high emphasis on electrifying vehicles. So this unit deals with grants and programs that deal with any of the zero emission or electric vehicles and charging station programs. Lastly is public affairs. This unit helps with policy. They're responsible for releasing the bills and working on those initiatives. Okay, so just to get into what energy performance contracting is, this is a 20-year program in Colorado. It's probably one of our longest programs and most successful programs. Currently, we've worked in projects in almost 70% of the state. So we'd love the opportunity to even boost that number by getting Elbert County involved as we can. We run this program as a public and private partnership. The public side being individuals like yourself, as well as universities and K-12 schools. The private part of this are our energy service contractors. Those are our engineering firms that are partners with our program that actually seek out clients, but would be responsible in identifying projects with each county, municipality, et cetera. Also in that private sphere are our financial firms. Colorado has pretty good community of banks and lenders that have worked with our program. Like I said, for some of them for 20 years, they know how our process works, and they're able to offer low interest rates because they're so familiar with our program. And lastly is the Colorado Energy Office. That's Dylan and I. So we provide free technical and contract support throughout this process. I think it's kind of nice, especially if you have a public jurisdiction that might not have an energy manager or an engineer full-time on staff. We kind of serve in as that additional help. Okay, so I'll let Dylan hop up here to kind of get into depth about how our process works.
Yeah, so I'll talk about what an energy performance contract project looks like. It's really a step to implement any of the energy efficiency improvements to your buildings, that, as well as capital improvements that might be needed, such as window replacements, new LED lighting, even extends to solar generation, things like that. And throughout that whole process, it's a collaboration between, as Dylan said, the Energy Office, Elbert County, as well as our private firms. Kind of what that process looks like is, we're here to tell you about the program, what it looks like, and if it feels like something is a good fit for Elbert County, we look to get an MOU signed that is non-binding, but really opens up our office to provide the technical support and put our time to helping the county with its needs. The next step would be to go through ESCO selection. So ESCO is our energy service companies, and we have partnered with 13 firms that we've pre-qualified in the state to do this work. These firms have gone through a process of getting pre-qualified, of showing us that they're capable of this work, that they're familiar with our contracts and documents and requirements, and that they can deliver on our requirements. We help you with that RFP process of putting out a bid and making sure it's attractive to our firms, attractive to you guys. You know the needs that you guys need to get done, get presented to our firms. Kind of a big meat of what our program offers is then that step 3 is the investment grade audit. Eileen shared with us that the county had recently gone through a facility conditions assessment, and we took a look at that, and that was great and has a lot of information in that, and that's kind of similar to what our investment grade audit looks like. Because the county already did that document, there might be some overlap, which makes this process simpler for the county. You wouldn't have to pay for work that has already been done. But what that investment grade audit is our ESCOs get really deep into your buildings, and they identify, they talk to staff, figure out what your needs are, and identify where there's opportunities for energy savings, as well as comfort and other improvements to your buildings. The investment grade part comes in because part of our program is guaranteeing savings associated with the project. So whether it's LED lighting, renewable solar generation, new furnaces or boilers, or we look to quantify what the utility savings from that will be. The energy savings can also be water savings, whether that's low flow aerators or irrigation controls. And that audit identifies what your yearly utility savings will be. And our ESCOs are responsible for guaranteeing those savings. So essentially, they are legally liable for those savings to occur for the county. And then we move forward with implementation of actually, before funding, having those guaranteed savings is what allows us to, have financial partners that are very familiar and comfortable with our program and offer low interest rates because they know there's that guarantee behind our savings. And essentially, those savings are what are then used to pay back the financing, the loan to do that work. And then we move forward with step 4 is implementation. Our ESCOs serve as kind of the general contractor at this phase, so you really only have to interface with one company, and they'll take care of doing all the bid work, working with local partners or whoever you prefer to implement all this work. And then once everything is completed, the final phase is measurement and verification. And this comes into that guaranteed savings aspect. So our Colorado statute requires 3 years of measurement and verification. And the firms will, the same ESCOs will be in your buildings, putting in loggers, data loggers, or taking measurements to verify that those savings that they identified in the investment grade audit are occurring. And this is where that guarantee comes in, where if there were any shortfalls or issues, the ESCO is required to either make you whole by paying for any shortfalls or doing additional work to cover that shortfall. So, would you like to take? So some of the benefits of energy performance contracting is, I think one of the big benefit is that first one is it maintains your existing tax base and debt limit. So what that means is this financing this loan is paid back by the energy savings on your utility line item. So you're not required to go out to voters to increase your tax base. This is a Tabor compliant way to obtain financing based on your existing utility line item.
You're essentially repurposing that money to pay off that debt service.
Okay, so you're not putting up the building as collateral, it's
That's right.
the audit that supports that?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep, correct. Our projects are required to be positive or neutral cash flow. So, depending on what those annual energy savings are identified, that kind of puts the constraint on how much you can finance. But you're always allowed to utilize additional funding sources, whether that is bond money, DOLA grants, anything else we really can also bring to the table to expand the scope of work done. With talking about DOLA grants, we're able to use our funds procured through EPC as the 50% match that DOLA requires for grants, so that's very useful. We have those guaranteed energy and maintenance cost savings. The maintenance cost part is something I didn't really mention, but that's another important part is there are O&M savings from not having to replace a light bulb every 1,000 hours that burns out, things like that. We have that private market-based financing partners who offer low percentage loans to our clients. And then throughout that whole process, you'll have support from the Colorado Energy Office. So DeLynn and I, we do have standardized state-approved documents that have been approved by the Attorney General's office, have been used for hundreds of projects through counties, local cities, school districts. We have those pre-qualified ESCOs that are very familiar with the process and do great work, and you have access to us that technical engineering support throughout the whole process. We look at all the reports that the ESCOs present and make sure that we agree with the energy savings, make sure that they're giving the county the value that we expect. And this is kind of just high level, why is this important? And of course, the problem we see is high utility costs, maybe capital improvement needs, you need new windows, you need new lights, whatever it is. And our program does offer that solution of using those energy conservation measures, that utility line item savings, to implement improvements, which really results in reduced energy usage, reduced utility bills.
Okay, so this slide is just showing how the budgeting process works with an energy performance contract. So that first column, that would be, so that's your current operating costs, your budget. That top little square is kind of highlighting maybe your potential and some cost reductions you could be making. So the next column, let's say you go through our process, release an RFP, you choose an energy service company to actually come out and prepare a project for you. Those are the identified savings. Those are what go into the third column. They're used as the payment for that financing loan. The last column shows that after you've finished that contract, that financing contract term, the savings are yours, as well as you benefit from the upgraded, the upgraded capital improvements. So that's for the life of those measures. I think Dylan kind of went through this, but these are some common energy efficiency measures we see. Of course, they're your lighting upgrades, boiler replacements. Another important one is even operation scheduling. So that's kind of automating your systems, putting them on a schedule, kind of thinking smarter with how things are running. Others are these, we call these electrification measures. It's renewable energy. If you're interested in any electric charging stations or even electric vehicles, these are also applicable under our program. And then also, as Dylan mentioned, I know this is a Colorado Energy Office, but this program does allow us to capture savings from water measures as well, because there is an operating or utility expense reduction. So that can be your low flow aerators, shower heads, any landscape improvements, as well as if you're interested on upgrading your water meters. We actually have 2 projects that are undergoing that as well and using our program for the process. So this program has been around for 20 years. It's one of the more successful programs our office offers. As you can see, we've worked with a number of counties, 24 out of 64. That could be 25.
Almost.
Almost. This just highlights some of our savings. So far, we've implemented 208 projects, almost $500,000 or over $500,000 in facility investments. And then, that bottom is just the annual savings. So almost 200 million electricity savings. That's important for us because that also speaks to the governor's greenhouse gas reduction goals. So all of these savings also help us report on those numbers and those goals as well. Okay, so I think we wanted to open up for questions if you have now, or you can send them to Eileen. Do our best to answer.
Yeah, just a quick question. When you have the savings being the payback for the capital expenditures, what is a typical payout period?
So typically we do see projects that could be maybe 10 to 15 years. Occasionally we see projects where, less than 10 years, especially you can bring to the table kind of if you have specific requirements where you need something to be, 10, 5 years, whatever it is. What our statute requires is that the payback has to be quicker than the weighted lifetime of the equipment or the measures you're putting in. So that's, another thing that we look at is, if the equipment's gonna be around for 15 years, your payback better be less than that, so.
Okay. And I guess my question, just on the 3 years of monitoring, I'd assume a fairly high level of confidence that if you're paying for another, 12 years beyond that you are going to continue to see those savings?
Yeah, so that is something that you can always do M&V for longer than 3 years, but there is a cost to that. We generally, from our view, we don't think it is worth that cost. Like you said, we're pretty confident that those savings will continue, especially with things like lighting. You can be very sure that, that light's going to be using that same power for the rest of its life, so.
Okay. And I guess the other, you had mentioned DOLA grants and other sources. Does your office help seek those, bring those in? Or?
Go ahead.
The ESCOs work with best grants,
ESCO.
DOLA grants. They're actually experts.
Okay.
Like, maybe they know more than me sometimes on the DOLA stuff. So that is another benefit of having them come into this process is they actually prepare the documents and help with the interviews that DOLA holds in order to get the grants, and they'll help you fill out the applications and all of that. So I think that's probably a big benefit for working with one of our firms.
Anything from this?
What is the administrative cost for all of this?
From our office, we don't have a cost. So our support is free. And then all the way through the RFP process, you don't see any cost. It's once you enter that investment grade audit phase is when you kind of start crunching numbers a little bit. And to speak to that, most projects work where there's no upfront cost. and that investment grade audit fee is actually rolled into the implementation project. A danger that wouldn't happen is if we have a firm in here, they're looking through your buildings and they don't identify any project, or
I think you could find one in this.
yeah. Then, they'll say, we don't think there's a project, and both parties walk away hands-free. Or there's another alternative is where you have the firm come in, they present a viable project, and for whatever reason, Elbert County, either maybe you want to do it in-house or you need to hold off. There are payment terms where you would need to pay that fee, usually within 90 days.
Okay.
But there is a way to do it no upfront cost, is if you actually do go forward with the implementation.
Okay, thank you.
The next piece to that, though, is, once we do all of that, what are your expectations from the county administration in terms of additional counting and all of this kind of stuff?
So after the project's all implemented, there are some requirements for the county. I think, one of the big ones is that utility line item budget. It has to be maintained. You can't say, oh, we just did all these efficiency things, so now we can reduce our utility budget by 5% because we're relying on those savings. Another thing is that, through the process the ESCO is responsible for coming up with a commissioning plan and kind of, requirements for how the county is to maintain the equipment. During that 3 years, there is a lot of visibility into that, but throughout the whole life of the project, the county is still required to do the general, upkeep of the equipment. There's always the option to partner with the ESCO past those 3 years if you would like them to stay, in your building and doing some of that maintenance, or, if you have a preferred local contractor, things like that. It's definitely part of that conversation as well.
So the ESCOs do serve as kind of a general contractor, the GC, throughout the project. So you don't need to staff up, or they'll also solicit RFPs for that subcontractor work. So as Dylan mentioned, if you do have a local team that you love working with and you kind of want to keep those dollars in the county, they'll work with you on that, and they prefer that as well.
Yeah, I would say at this point, if you guys are comfortable, I'd say work with staff on an MOU. It's not binding, and we can keep talking. So that looks like a good program.
All right, thank you, and we'll be in touch,
Thank
Eileen.
you.
Thank you all so much. We appreciate
Yeah.
it. We will, the MOU was included in your packet for you to
yeah.
take a look at, and you note that it's a non-binding. It's just basically an agreement that we'll continue to work together. But I just have to say that, Sam and I have looked at a lot of potential grant programs and sources of funding for the many capital needs that we've got. And this is the most promising, most exciting partnership that we've really talked about so far. I think there's so much about this program that really dovetails, it meets our needs as well as the CEO's office as well. And I'm very optimistic. Of course, we have quite a bit of a process to go through to make sure that it really does fit what our needs are. But it's the goals that it has in place are very similar to the goals that we have in place for the sort of medium and longer term future of our facilities here in the county. So I'm super excited.
Thanks, Eileen.
Very
Thank
promising.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Just before you depart, is there any public comment or questions on this? Seeing none, we'll let you get back into Denver traffic.
Thank you.
Alrighty. I think census was the only thing I was tracking that we were gonna.
Yeah, I feel like you're going to be tired of hearing from me today. Again, Eileen Krauth, Deputy County Manager. As you know, the census is coming up here in just a few weeks. And the Census Bureau has had a lot of information on its website relating to what we can expect as it relates to the upcoming census. So if it's okay with you, I would like to play this, just a under 10-minute video that includes all of the things that I would want to talk about, and then we'll talk a little bit more about some local efforts that are underway here. So, if I can get the AV to work. So that really was the best summary of answering the questions that I frequently get. I did have a conversation last week with some census representatives relating to the challenge of, as you saw, you have to, in order to respond to the census, you have to have in hand a 12-digit census ID. And that census ID is delivered normally by mail, U.S. mail, to a residence. So for those of our residents who, mostly rural residents, who get their mail at a P.O. box, they will not receive that invitation with the 12-digit number at their P.O. box where they normally get their mail. They will have an enumerator come to visit their residence. And when I talked to the census representatives, the question of locked gates was a big issue. They are discussing that in some of their technical meetings, and will have some feedback for us. We plan to have an open house on March 26th here in this room in the afternoon. We'll be having some publicity about it. We'll be inviting some of the stakeholders from the community to get together and ask the questions for their particular communities, and that's one of them that we'll be addressing there. So we've got a significant number of social media posts over the next couple of weeks. But please, I encourage you all to talk to your friends and neighbors about responding to the 2020 census. It's very exciting.
No.
Thank you. All right, do we have any other staff reports? Okay, seeing none. Open it up at this point for open public comments, chance to speak on any issue that's not on the agenda today. Just ask name, address, and keep comments to 3 minutes if speaking. Okay, seeing none. We've taken care of our discussion item. We'll move on to action items. First item we had was approval of the February 26 meeting minutes.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve the February 26, 2020 minutes as written and dispense with the reading of those minutes.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve the minutes as presented and dispense with reading. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. All righty, next one's a little more substantial. Adoption of the Elbert County Public-Private Improvement Standards. Road standards, I think most of us would call them.
Commissioners, Rory Hale, Director of Public Works. We probably need to change the date to 2020. It's taken a little bit of time, but you might want to reflect that in the record.
Okay.
If you recall, we had this as a discussion item in January.
Yeah, yes.
We've only received a couple of referral comments. Those have been addressed.
Okay.
A lot of it was just language, titles,
Okay.
spelling. This is going to be a living, breathing document, so we're going to review this probably every 6 months. We're probably going to look at it again this summer, and we may have some more changes. A lot of it's one-off stuff, but as construction begins, road construction begins, housing construction begins, we're running across things that we probably need to address in here as well. So obviously when we get to that point, we'll bring the amendments forward. So I ask for your consideration to officially adopt these.
When you bring it back the next time, would you reduce it to 5 pages?
Yeah, chances are if we're gonna do an amendment, it'll just be the individual page or item itself, so. But these hadn't been touched since
They were adopted,
2006 or
Was there
7.
any material change in what your expectations are, or?
Lots.
Yeah.
Section 700 in particular. As far as the actual standards themselves, we typically default to CDOT standards, roadway standards. We have had a few changes related to water, wastewater, irrigation, that type of thing, but that's going to be more of a, the county has to have standards, puts the onus on the developers, HOAs, and governing metro districts to make sure that they're following these standards. But other than that, probably the most significant changes were in section 700 for roadway.
For what?
Roadway.
it's, I know it was quite a bit of work, so just,
Yeah. took a
even
while.
if there weren't substantial changes in a lot of areas, it's just a lot to review. Yeah, and just in the recurring update process, I guess similar to what we've done with CDS, just if we make sure we have a good mechanism to highlight what actually has changed when we make updates, so folks looking at that massive volume know what,
Yeah.
where to look
Get-
for things
gets
that
a
may have
little
changed
tedious.
since I perused it last. Any, just ask if there's any public comment or other staff comment on this, and not seeing any, I'd entertain a motion to adopt the public-private improvement standards.
I'll make a motion, we adopt the Elbert County Public-Private Improvement Standards.
Second.
Okay, motion and a second to adopt the public-private improvement standards. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye, motion carries. Thank you. All right, the final action item we have was just receipt of the 2021 Elbert County budget goals, so. Yeah. Hey, Sam.
Commissioners, it's that time of year to start thinking about the 2021 budget, so we are off and running with that. We have looked at your 2021 budget goals. They've been sent out to all directors and elected officials. Finance department has also looked at them. This is the final of that, and we think that it's time for you as a group to deliver these to us as a guidance document for developing the 2021 budget. There are several things in there that are familiar from previous budget goals. What I will call out is that there are also some very specifics as we start drilling down into details on some of this. Of course, the overall balanced budget, making sure that we have reserves in place and contingency in place for first quarter ops and carryovers from fund balances. Continue to working on our spend plans. And then the revenue projections and expense projections into future years, which we did incorporate in the 2020 budget and will further define in 2021. Also looking at some assumptions as far as medical costs and property and casualty insurance. We're recommending 12% on the property and casualty insurance with a caveat that that might be a little low. We had a lot of increase this year and some additions, so we're trying to struggle through that. It may be closer to the 15 to 18%, but we think 12% will be a good planning tool. As we refine that number, we may go up or down on any of these assumptions, again, based on better data. Again, personnel will be an area to look at, as well as efficiencies and capital investments, continuing to work on the Facilities Capital Improvement Fund, and then the policy changes and recommendations will also be looked at. And with that, I'll be happy to take any questions.
I've just got a couple of comments, and I don't want to change the thing, but a couple of comments is that I've been reading some stuff about economic views of the future, and there's some very reputable economists that think we're in a transition or economic change is coming soon. So we need to keep that in mind, that when they say an economic change, it's not a positive one.
Understood.
So we just got, so this, what I call the rainy day fund and the end of the year fund balances are going to be very important if this continues to look like it might be. And then the second thing is there's a department or two that may be in a transition that we need to be starting to think about how that's going to fit into our future year's budget.
Absolutely, and I think we've had some discussions at the staff level on taking a look at all the facilities and all the requirements for all the elected officials and all the directors coming up into the future. So that will be part of that facilities plan that we are developing and working on, and that the first stage was that facilities condition assessment, but we need to look at staffing and where people are located and where resources are located based on the best available information. Going back to the economic development thing, yes, absolutely, we need to continue to be fairly conservative in our budgeting, not knowing what the future looks like, and making sure that we have reserve and contingency plans in place.
Yeah, just the kind of budget never stops, so we're in the middle of auditing 19, executing 20, and thinking about 21. So, yeah, to me, just some of this is I mean, there's some very specifics in looking at how we fund noxious weed control, animal control, and where that fits in the budget. And then the other big ones to me are just this, we put a lot of money into studies and keeping that going. I mean, we've got we're doing a compensation study this year. We need to make sure we're looking at how that affects, the output of that affects pay and allowances for folks in the following years. As you had mentioned, the facilities study kind of turning into a facilities plan and then funding it in the out years, and kind of the same with our transportation master plan that, we've established a 5-year CIP, but coming out of this transportation master plan, we may see some changes in that, or what do we go forward with, so. And I appreciate all the things we can do, like this energy office where other people can give us money to do things we need to do. So, with that, I would accept a motion to adopt these budget goals for 2021.
So moved.
I'll second.
Okay, motion and a second to adopt the Commissioner's 2021 budget goals. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Aye, motion carries. I did neglect to ask for public comment, but I don't see any. Okay, that takes care of our action items, just agenda items for our next meeting. I'm not sure what we have teed up.
The only thing that we have on the agenda for our next meeting is, ironically, a proclamation recognizing April 6th through 12th, 2020 as National Public Health Week. Seeing as public health has been so much in the headlines lately, I think that's probably appropriate. But that's all I've got.
Yeah, I think probably just a standing item for the time being is an update on the COVID-19, and then if there's a necessity to actually hold a Board of Health meeting to take any action as a Board of Health, and let's kind of keep that in mind as well. Do you have anything?
No.
Okay.
Are you going to bring the MOU
Yeah.
next meeting?
Thank you.
Yep.
That's a good question.
All right. That's a good start. Alrighty. Not seeing anything else at the moment, so at this point we'll recess until 1 p.m. this afternoon. We've got a land use item to hear. So thanks for coming out this morning. Yeah.
Positive than
Yeah.
I was expecting.
I'd be interested to, I find it curious, the 3-year monitoring, I find it curious, because a lot of stuff